The sky above was a deep purple, and the trees swayed like they had a mind of their own. Jack stood alone on the edge of a quiet alien forest, far from Earth and anyone who knew his name. His small explorer ship was hidden behind the rocky hills. He had landed on this newly found planet just 2 days ago, sent by Earth's Science Division to scan the land and gather samples. Jack was used to strange things. He had seen floating rocks, glowing rivers, and even a mountain that hummed like a giant animal. But nothing prepared him for what he saw that evening. He bent down to scan a strange plant when he felt eyes watching him. Slowly he turned his head and froze. A figure stood between the thick trees, silent as the wind. It was a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was a soft pale blue, almost silver under the sunset. Her hair was long and dark, falling past her shoulders like silk. But her most striking feature was her eyes, large and bright, with a shimmer that made them look almost metallic. She had small, elf-like ears, and her dress looked like it was made of living fabric, flowing even when the air was still. Jack didn't move. She didn't either. They stood like that for a full minute, just staring. He slowly raised his hand in peace, not saying a word. The alien woman tilted her head, as if trying to read him. Then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, she turned and vanished into the forest without a sound. Jack blinked. Was that real? He whispered. He looked around but saw no sign of her. Still, something inside him said this planet wasn't as empty as the reports claimed. Maybe it wasn't uninhabited. Maybe someone, or something, had been living here all along, watching quietly from the shadows. As night fell, Jack returned to his ship, his mind spinning with questions. Who was she? Why didn't she speak? Why did she seem more curious than afraid? He pulled out his datapad and made a quick note. Day 2. Unexpected life form spotted. Female. Humanoid. Intelligent. Non-aggressive. Will investigate further. Then he sat back in his chair, staring out the window toward the dark forest. I hope she comes back, he muttered. He didn't know it yet, but that single moment would change everything. His mission, his understanding of alien life, and maybe something deeper he couldn't yet explain. Something had just begun. The next morning, Jack woke early. The forest outside was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. Something about the planet made it feel alive, like it was watching him. He quickly ate a meal bar, checked his equipment, and stepped outside with one goal: to find her again. He followed the same path where he saw her before, moving slowly, scanning the trees. Hours passed. No sound, no movement, just the rustle of leaves and the soft buzzing of insect-like creatures in the distance. Then suddenly, he felt it again, that same presence. He turned, and there she was. The alien woman stood across a shallow stream, watching him from behind a tree. She hadn't made a sound, yet somehow Jack had known she was there. This time, he didn't move too fast. He raised his hand again, offering peace. To his surprise, she stepped forward, carefully, like a deer unsure if it should run or stay. In her hand, she held something round and smooth. It was a fruit, orange with green spots, pulsing faintly with light. She walked to the edge of the stream and placed it on a flat stone. Then she stepped back and waited. Jack looked at the fruit, then at her. He slowly crossed the stream, knelt, and picked it up. It was warm in his hand, almost alive. Without thinking too much, he took a small bite. The flavor was sweet, sharp, and strange, but not bad. He gave her a small smile and nodded. Delicious, he said softly. She watched him closely. Her face didn't change much, but her eyes seemed calmer now, like she had tested him, and he had passed. Jack sat on a nearby rock, not too close to scare her, but close enough to talk. I'm Jack, he said, tapping his chest. Human. From Earth. She tilted her head again, listening carefully. But still, she said nothing. Jack continued talking. He told her small things, what his mission was, how Earth looked, and even about rain. She just stood there, silent but focused, like every word he said was important. He tried asking her name, but she didn't respond. After a while, she turned around and began to walk back into the trees. Jack stood up quickly. "Wait, will I see you again?" She paused. Then, slowly, she gave a single nod before vanishing behind the thick trees once more. Jack stood there for a while, staring at the empty space she left behind. He didn't know her name or why she kept appearing, but one thing was clear: she wasn't afraid of him anymore. And she was listening. Something was building between them, something fragile, quiet, but real. Over the next few days, Jack and the alien woman met again, always in the forest, always in silence. She never spoke, but she watched him closely, listened to everything he said, and sometimes even smiled slightly at his jokes. Jack learned not to move too fast, not to ask too many questions. She seemed more comfortable that way. He would sit on a rock and talk while she sat or stood nearby, calm but distant. He still didn't know her name, but she had become a part of his routine. She brought him more fruits. Sometimes she pointed to things, rare plants, strange animals, as if guiding him through her world. One evening, the sun was low, and the forest glowed orange through the leaves. Jack was sitting by the stream again. The alien woman stood across from him, her face half lit by sunlight. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Her pale blue skin shimmered softly in the light. Her silver eyes reflected the sunset. Her hair, almost black, moved gently with the breeze. He felt his heart beat a little faster. Without thinking too hard, he spoke quietly. "You have a fascinating beauty." The words were simple, honest. But the moment he said them, she froze. Her eyes widened slightly, and her body became stiff, like a statue. She didn't blink. She didn't move. It was like someone had pressed pause on her. Jack blinked, confused. "Did I say something wrong?" he asked, but she didn't answer. The silence became heavy. Then, slowly, she turned away, walked a few steps back, and disappeared into the forest again, without a word. Jack stood there alone, unsure of what just happened. He hadn't meant to scare her. He thought he had given her a compliment. On Earth, those words would have made someone smile. But this wasn't Earth, and she wasn't human. Back at his ship, Jack couldn't stop thinking about the look in her eyes. Shock, fear, shame. It didn't make sense. Why did those words freeze her like that? He opened his notebook and wrote, "Told her she was beautiful." She reacted, strangely, froze, then left. Maybe I crossed a line. Must understand her culture better. He leaned back in his chair, sighing. Maybe I should have said nothing. Still, deep inside, he didn't regret the words. He meant them. She was beautiful, not just in looks, but in the way she moved, the way she listened, the way she stood alone in a wild world and held her place like she belonged there. He just hoped she would come back. The next day, Jack felt the weight of silence pressing down on him. He had said something simple, something true, but it had made the alien woman leave so quickly, like he had said something terrible. His mind raced as he tried to understand what went wrong. Had he misunderstood her reaction? Was there a different way to speak to her? He spent hours sitting in his ship, running through the past few encounters in his head. She had never reacted like this before. Sure, she had always been quiet, but this was different. This time, she looked shocked, like she had been hit by something unexpected. Still, he couldn't forget the way she looked at him when he spoke, those big silver eyes, wide and unsure. His heart ached slightly as he thought about her. "I hope I didn't scare her," he whispered to himself. But Jack couldn't stop himself from going back to the forest. He needed answers. He needed to see her again, even if she didn't want to speak. He walked through the same thick trees, feeling the air grow cooler as the sun began to set. The forest was peaceful, but today it felt different. Jack had spent so much time focusing on the details, on the plants, the creatures, and the mysteries of the land. But now, everything seemed small compared to the weight of his thoughts about her. As he reached the clearing near the stream, his heart skipped a beat. There she was. The alien woman was standing by the water, staring at the reflection of the sky. Her back was turned to him, but he could still see the soft glow of her skin in the dimming light. She seemed to be deep in thought. "Nairi," Jack called softly, unsure of himself. It felt strange using her name when he had never heard her say it. At the sound of her name, Nairi turned slowly. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Jack took a step forward, his voice gentle. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable the other day." She blinked, her expression unreadable. Then, after a long pause, she spoke for the first time since that moment. "You said something," she whispered, her voice almost a soft breath. "No one has said that to me. Ever." Jack's chest tightened. She looked at him, her eyes searching him as though she were trying to understand something deeper than words. "I didn't mean to make you scared," he said, taking another cautious step toward her. "I just thought you were beautiful." Her gaze softened, and for a moment, Jack felt the weight of her silence lift. But she didn't speak again. Instead, she reached out and gently touched the stone beside her, as if grounding herself. Jack stopped, standing a few feet away. He didn't want to rush anything. After what felt like a long time, Nairi spoke again. "In my world, beauty is a dangerous thing. It makes us vulnerable." Jack's mind raced. He hadn't considered that. He had no idea what her culture was like. But now, everything was starting to make sense. "I understand," he said softly. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." She nodded, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "You did not know. But now I understand you." Jack smiled, relieved. Maybe they weren't so different after all. Maybe they could learn to understand each other. As the days passed, Jack spent more time with Nairi. The air between them had changed. No longer was there tension or silence. Instead, there was something new, an understanding. They both learned to communicate in their own ways. Jack with his simple earth words, and Nairi with her soft gestures and careful expressions. The more Jack listened to her, the more he realized how much they had in common. The more he saw the depth of her world, her thoughts, her past. One evening, as the two of them sat beside the stream, Nairi spoke again. Her voice was gentle, like a whispering wind, but there was something different this time. She was opening up. "My people, the Terriari," she began, her eyes fixed on the water. "We are not like you. We are taught to be silent, to be perfect in our ways. Emotions, beauty, they are seen as weaknesses. We are trained to think logically, to never let our hearts speak louder than our minds." Jack didn't interrupt. He just nodded, his eyes never leaving her as she spoke. "I was different," she continued. "From the moment I was born, I felt things no one else did. I saw the beauty in things others ignored. I wanted to understand the world in ways that didn't fit into the rules." Jack could see the sadness in her eyes as she spoke. It was as if she had been carrying a weight for years, something that had always made her feel out of place among her own people. "They called me weak," Nairi added quietly. "A failure. So I left. I came here to be alone, to hide from the judgment of others. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could find peace." Jack felt a pang in his chest. He had no idea how hard her life had been. He thought about how hard it had been for him at times, back on Earth, but nothing compared to what she had experienced. "I didn't know," Jack said softly, "but I'm glad you're here." Nairi turned to him, her eyes filled with an emotion he had never seen before, vulnerability. She was letting him in, allowing him to see parts of her that no one else had. "I never thought I would speak to a human," she said, her voice quieter now. "But you see me. Not as a monster, not as someone to fear. You see me as a person." Jack smiled, his heart warm with her words. "You're not a monster, Nairi. You're more than that." They both sat there for a long time, watching the river flow past. It was the first time Jack had felt truly at peace on this strange planet. He realized something important. He didn't need to understand everything about her world to understand her. She was just like him, in more ways than one. The sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the land. Nairi stood up and looked toward the sky. "The stars here are different from home," she said, her voice distant. "They look smaller, but they remind me that there's always more to see, more to learn." Jack stood beside her, gazing up at the same sky. "Yeah, there's always more." They stood together, silent but not alone. They both knew their journey was just beginning. The days that followed felt different. Jack couldn't quite explain it, but everything had changed between him and Nairi. They had crossed a line, from strangers to something more. She began to open up more and more, sharing pieces of her past, and Jack felt like he was getting to know her in ways he never expected. It wasn't just the words they shared. It was the quiet moments, the simple things that spoke louder than anything they could say. They spent their afternoons exploring the strange planet together. Nairi led Jack through forests of trees that hummed with energy, and across fields where flowers bloomed in colors that didn't exist on Earth. She showed him how to listen to the wind, how to understand the quiet language of the land. One afternoon, as they walked through a field of tall, soft grass, Nairi stopped suddenly and looked at him. Her silver eyes were thoughtful, almost like she was considering something important. "Why do you keep coming back?" she asked, her voice gentle. Jack hesitated, surprised by the question. It was the first time she had asked something so direct. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I guess I feel like I'm meant to be here. With you. I don't want to be alone anymore, and I don't think you do either." Nairi was silent for a long moment, her gaze on the ground as she processed his words. Finally, she spoke. "I've been alone for so long," she said quietly. "I didn't think I could trust anyone again. But you make me feel different. You make me feel like I don't have to hide who I am." Jack's heart swelled at her words. He didn't understand everything about her, but he understood this. She wasn't just a stranger. She wasn't just an alien. She was someone who needed connection, just like he did. "I'm glad I make you feel that way," Jack replied softly. "I don't have all the answers, but I'm here. I'll stay here, with you, for as long as you want me to." The air around them seemed to shift, the tension between them fading away as they shared this small, quiet moment. For the first time, Jack realized how much he had come to care for her. It wasn't just about the adventure or the mission anymore. It was about Nairi, about the connection they had built, something that felt stronger than the distance between their worlds. That evening, as the stars began to appear in the sky, Nairi shared something with Jack she had never spoken of before. She told him about her past, her people, and the rules they followed. How beauty was forbidden, how emotions were seen as weaknesses. She had always felt different, like something was missing. But here on this strange planet with Jack, she felt free. "I never knew I could feel like this," she said, looking up at the stars. Maybe I'm starting to believe that beauty isn't a weakness. Maybe it's a strength." Jack smiled, the warmth of her words filling him with hope. "Maybe it is." They stood there together, looking up at the stars, no longer two separate beings from different worlds, but two people sharing something real. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, but both of them needed. The peaceful days Jack had spent with Nairi were soon interrupted. He had grown accustomed to the quiet, the simple moments with her, where everything seemed right in the world. But, as always, nothing in the universe stayed quiet for long. One afternoon, while they were exploring the forest, the familiar hum of a ship's engines cut through the peaceful air. Jack stopped in his tracks, his heart racing. He knew that sound. "Not again," he muttered under his breath. "A ship from Earth. The research vessel he had arrived on was overhead, moving slowly, scanning the land. It was too soon for them to be back. Jack had no way to contact them, but he knew they would be looking for him, for answers about this strange planet. Nayari's expression grew tense as she looked up, her silver eyes narrowing. "They come." Jack looked at her, worry creeping into his chest. "They're not supposed to be here. They won't understand." Before he could say more, the ship's shadow passed over them, and a group of human soldiers descended into the forest. They were wearing heavy armor and carrying weapons, standard for any exploratory mission, but not what Jack had hoped to see. "Jack, we need to go," Nayari whispered urgently, grabbing his arm. "They will harm me if they find me." Jack's mind raced. He had to protect her, but what could he do? These were his people, and they would follow orders, no matter who they were up against. Nayari was an alien, and to them, she was an unknown threat. But Jack wasn't about to let her be captured or hurt. He had made a promise to protect her, and he wouldn't break it. "Stay close," Jack said, pulling her behind a thick tree. They crouched low, hidden in the shadows, as the soldiers passed by, not noticing them. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, his eyes fixed on the soldiers as they searched the area. They were getting closer, and there was nowhere left to hide. "They will find us," Nayari said, her voice trembling. "We must leave." Jack shook his head. Not without a fight. His mind worked quickly. There was only one way to stop them, and he wasn't going to run anymore. He couldn't. Nayari looked at him, understanding the determination in his eyes. She stepped back, ready for whatever was to come. The soldiers came closer, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the forest. Jack took a deep breath, then stepped out from behind the tree, hands raised in peace. "Stop," he called out. "I'm here. Don't hurt her." The soldiers froze, their weapons raised. One of them, a commanding officer, stepped forward. "Jack," he said, his voice cold, "you're in serious trouble. Return to the ship immediately." Jack didn't move. He stood firm, his eyes never leaving the officer. "No," he said, his voice steady. "You're not taking her." The officer's eyes narrowed. "You don't have a choice." Jack could feel the tension building, but he wouldn't back down. Not this time. The atmosphere between Jack and the soldiers grew tense. The officer's cold gaze held Jack's, as if daring him to take the next step. Jack stood his ground, not moving an inch. He wasn't going to let them take Nayari, no matter what. "You really think you can stop us, Jack?" the officer said, his voice sharp and commanding. "This is not your decision to make." Jack's heart raced, but his voice remained steady. "You don't understand. She's not a threat. She's just different." The officer scoffed. "Different? She's an alien, Jack. You don't know what they're capable of. They're dangerous." Nayari stepped forward, her silver eyes glinting in the dim light of the forest. "I am not your enemy," she said, her voice soft but strong. "I have never harmed anyone." The soldiers were silent for a moment, staring at her, unsure of what to do. Jack could feel the weight of their uncertainty. They had been trained to view aliens as nothing more than threats, to be studied, contained, and controlled. They didn't see the truth like Jack did. "She is my friend," Jack said firmly, turning to the officer, "and I will not let you hurt her." The officer's jaw tightened. He motioned to his men. "Secure him." Without warning, two soldiers lunged at Jack, their hands reaching for him. But Nayari acted fast. She raised her hand, and in a swift, fluid motion, the ground beneath the soldiers' feet seemed to shift. They stumbled and fell, thrown off balance by an unseen force. "Stop," the officer shouted, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What did you do?" Nayari didn't answer. She just stood tall, her eyes calm but full of power. It was the first time Jack had seen her use her abilities like this, her strength, her control over the land around her. "Let them go, Nayari," Jack said, his voice gentle but filled with urgency. We can't hurt them." She nodded, and with a wave of her hand, the soldiers were released from her grip. They scrambled to their feet, visibly shaken but unharmed. The officer stepped back, his face now showing a mix of fear and anger. "You've made a big mistake, Jack," he said, his voice colder than ever. "You've chosen her over us. This is insubordination." "I haven't chosen anyone," Jack replied. "I'm just doing what's right." The officer's eyes flicked to Nairi, then back to Jack. "You'll regret this." "I don't think I will," Jack said quietly. There was a long silence. The officer stood there, staring at Jack, weighing his options. Finally, he made a gesture to his men, signaling them to step back. "Come with us now, Jack," the officer said, his voice harsh. "We'll sort this out back on the ship." Jack shook his head. "I'm not going back with you. Not without her." The officer's eyes narrowed in anger, but he knew there was nothing more he could do at the moment. The situation had already escalated too far. "Fine," he spat. "Stay here, but this isn't over." Jack didn't respond. He turned to Nairi, who was still standing silently beside him. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Jack saw a flicker of something new in them: hope. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. He had made his choice, and he wasn't going to let anyone take Nairi from him. Not now. Not ever. The tension in the air lingered long after the officer and his team left. Jack and Nairi were alone again, standing in the quiet forest, with the weight of the world pressing on their shoulders. Jack didn't look back at the soldiers as they retreated. He didn't care about their threats or their anger anymore. What mattered now was Nairi, her safety, her trust, and the fragile bond they were forming. He turned to her, his eyes filled with concern. "What happens now?" he asked softly. "What are we going to do?" Nairi didn't answer right away. She looked up at the sky, the stars beginning to shimmer in the evening sky. The peacefulness of the forest seemed so distant now, replaced by the looming presence of the ship above, and the soldiers who had threatened everything Jack was trying to protect. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I never thought it would come to this. I never thought someone would care enough to stand by me." Jack stepped closer, his voice gentle. "I do care. I'm not leaving you." She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the soft light of the stars. For a moment, there was a sadness in her gaze, a deep sorrow, like she was burdened by something she couldn't escape. Jack could feel it in his bones, but he didn't know how to help her yet. "I've lived alone for so long," Nairi continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought I could hide here, far away from everything and everyone. But now, I don't know if hiding is enough. I don't know what to do." Jack's heart tightened as he listened to her. He knew she was afraid of being alone, of being caught, of losing the only connection she had left. He understood that fear all too well, but he also knew they couldn't run forever. "We don't have to hide," Jack said, his voice firm. "We can figure this out together. We don't have to face it alone." She looked at him, her expression softening. "You really want to stay with me, even after everything?" Jack nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, I'm not leaving." "You're not alone anymore, Nairi." She stood there for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for any sign of hesitation. When she saw none, she took a deep breath and nodded. "I don't know what's going to happen next," she said softly. "But I believe you." Jack reached out and gently placed his hand on hers. "We'll figure it out. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." For the first time, Nairi smiled. It wasn't a wide smile, but it was real. Her eyes softened, and a warmth spread through her, like the stars above had suddenly reached down and touched her heart. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jack squeezed her hand. "No need to thank me. We're in this together." They stood there for a while, side by side, letting the silence of the night wrap around them. The forest felt less like a dangerous place now, and more like a place where they could find peace, if only for a moment. Jack had no idea what the future would hold, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let fear control their lives anymore. "We can't stay here forever," Jack said, breaking the silence. "But we'll make sure they understand. We'll show them we're not the enemy." Nayari nodded, her expression more determined than ever. "Yes, we will." And for the first time, Jack truly believed it. Together, they could face whatever came next. The days following their stand against the soldiers were filled with a quiet determination. Jack and Nayari didn't have all the answers, but they had each other, and that was enough for now. They spent their time in the forest, walking through the wilderness, talking about the future, and slowly making plans. There was no clear path ahead, but together, they felt stronger. The human ship had left, but it wasn't gone for good. Jack knew it would be back, and when it did, he had no idea what would happen. Would they send more soldiers, or would they listen to him? They couldn't hide forever, but neither of them was willing to give up without a fight. The world they lived in was different now, but they were no longer strangers. They were a team. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the orange glow lighting up their faces, Jack turned to Nayari with a thought that had been weighing on his mind. "We can't keep running forever," he said. "Eventually, they'll come back. And when they do, we need to be ready." Nayari looked at him, her silver eyes steady. "What do you want to do?" Jack paused, his fingers tracing the edge of a rock. "I think we need to talk to them. Show them we're not enemies. We're not here to hurt anyone." Nayari nodded slowly. "I agree. But I don't know how they will react. I don't know if they'll listen." Jack leaned back against a tree, his gaze fixed on the stars above. "They'll have to. They can't ignore us forever. You and I, we have something real. We're not so different. They'll see that." Nayari stayed silent for a moment, then stood up and moved closer to him. She extended her hand, offering it to him. "Then we will face it together. Whatever happens." Jack looked at her, his heart filled with a sense of certainty. "Together," he repeated, taking her hand in his. The fire crackled softly as the night grew colder, but the warmth between them seemed to fill the space. It was the first time in a long while that Jack felt truly at peace. The future was uncertain, but with Nayari by his side, he knew they could face whatever came next. Days turned into weeks, and the planet became less of a mystery to Jack. He learned more about Nayari's people, her culture, and their laws. He learned about her fears, her dreams, and what it had cost her to be different. He had shared his own struggles as well. His loneliness, his need for connection, his hope for something more. They were beginning to build something stronger than either of them had expected. One morning, as Jack prepared to leave the shelter they had built together, he looked at Nayari, who was standing by the entrance, her eyes watching him with a calm intensity. "I'm ready," he said. "Let's go. It's time." Nayari smiled, and for the first time, Jack saw her completely at ease. She was no longer the woman who hid in the shadows of her past, afraid of being seen. She was ready to face the world, to speak her truth, and to fight for her place. Together, they left their shelter behind, walking toward whatever awaited them. They didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, they were no longer afraid of it.